However, if you look at what Blake Griffin offers to a team, and you look at the other players that you can place at the power forward position, is Blake Griffin even that good of a player?
I agree. I'd rather take Draymond. I'd rather take Aldridge.
During the mid-2000s, the Phoenix Suns dominated the NBA with a revolutionary style of basketball. The team was led by a pass-first point guard in Steve Nash, who was highly efficient from the field, an extremely athletic big man in Amari Stoudemire, and a visionary in a head coach with Mike D'Antoni. And despite the fact that they never won a championship, their contributions and their impact to the NBA is still felt in today's league. So much so that many people still hold that team in high regards as one of the greatest teams in NBA history. However, just like a lot of other great teams in NBA history, there are always the lost heroes that go unnoticed. Players such as Raja Bell, Boris Diaw, and Joe Johnson, even though yes, they were role players on that roster, they still left a lasting impact that allowed that team to be as great as it was. But even with those supporting cast players, there is still one standout player that a lot of people still do not give the recognition that he rightfully deserves. A player who sacrificed a significant amount of his game while also picking up a significant amount of a load on the defensive end, in which this team was really not known for whatsoever. And this player is Shawn Marion. And in my opinion, outside of Steve Nash, Shawn Marion was the most important player along with the best player on the roster. And I know a lot of people will point out to a player such as Amari Stoudemire. However, by the end of this video, I think you will have a better understanding of where I'm coming from. And hopefully, you will gain some respect towards Shawn Marion's game and how revolutionary his style of play was during that time period. But before we get to that stage of his career, let's date it back to the beginning. Shawn Marion was drafted by the Phoenix Suns in the 1999 draft with the 9th pick. Now, Marion was not expected to be a franchise-changing player. However, he was known for his extreme athleticism and his uncanny ways around the rim to grab rebounds. And in his first year in the NBA, he showed some promise with only playing 51 games and starting 38 of them, as he averaged 10 points, 6.5 rebounds, along with a block. And with more practice time and opportunity, Shawn Marion's stat line immediately increased in his sophomore season, in which he averaged 17 points, nearly 11 rebounds, almost 2 steals, while shooting 48% from the field. Over the next 2 years in Shawn Marion's career, he would drastically improve. So much so, by his 4th year, he was averaging 21 points, 9.5 rebounds, 2 steals, a block, while shooting 45% or better from the field and 38% from behind the arc. Also, during the 2003 season, Shawn Marion was selected for his first All-Star selection, and you can make an argument that he was now the best player on a playoff team because during the season, the Phoenix Suns won 44 games. And all of this was accomplished before Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni took over the operations when it comes to the Phoenix Suns, which thus brings us to the 04-05 season. This year, the Phoenix Suns famously won 62 games. They acquired Steve Nash during the offseason, in which he would then go on to win the league MVP. And with the development of players such as Amari Stoudemire and Joe Johnson, the Phoenix Suns immediately became a legitimate threat in a tough Western Conference. But that's not the most impressive part about this team. Even though yes, Steve Nash became a household name and put himself in the hierarchy of basketball excellence by winning the MVP, a lot of people casually overlooked the responsibilities that Shawn Marion had to add to his game. At this point in Shawn Marion's career, despite the fact he was never selected for an All-NBA team, he was still viewed as one of the more versatile defenders in the NBA. And because of this, Mike D'Antoni allowed this to be used to his advantage and placed him at the power forward position.
About Shawn Marion, he can guard point guards, he can guard centers, and he can guard LeBron James.
Now, the reason why this is so key is because better spacing and on the defensive end, having someone use his versatility to aid a team that really didn't have that many defensive pieces, which during this time period, especially in the Western Conference, was extremely key. Be very mindful, during the 2000s in the Western Conference, it was some of the greatest power forwards the game has ever seen. So when it comes to Shawn Marion, despite the fact that he normally played the small forward position, he was now left with the responsibility to guard players who more than likely were going to be significantly taller than him and have some type of offensive advantage. But that still did not stop Shawn Marion. And as we move forward in the playoffs in the 2005 season, as we clearly see, Shawn Marion had his hands full with the competition. In the first round of the playoffs, while being matched up against the Memphis Grizzlies, Shawn Marion will go on to average 21 points, 12.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, along with 2 blocks and a steal, while shooting 55% from the field and 38.5% from behind the arc. And then on the defensive side, he held Pau Gasol to 21 points, 7.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 2 blocks, however only shooting 48 to 49% from the field. Moving on to the second round, as the Phoenix Suns matched up with the Dallas Mavericks, obviously led by Dirk Nowitzki, Shawn Marion posted up 23 points, 12 rebounds, a steal and a half, and nearly 2 blocks while shooting 48% from the field and 52% from behind the arc. Then on the other hand, Dirk Nowitzki still posted up a really good stat line, nearly 27 points, almost 12 rebounds, 3 assists with a block and a steal, also shooting 45% from the field and 37% from behind the arc. But as you clearly see, Shawn Marion held his own. And again, if you take into account defense, you can make an argument that Shawn Marion might have actually outplayed Dirk Nowitzki, especially for the playing style and him being a third option on the Phoenix Suns. And then finally, in the conference finals, the Phoenix Suns had to match up with the San Antonio Spurs with Tim Duncan. And even though in the conference finals, Shawn Marion didn't play the greatest, which was expected as he was going to have to defend and then be guarded by Tim Duncan, who was the greatest power forward in NBA history. In the first 2 rounds, he definitely lived up to his expectations, and many people would say, including myself, he exceeded them. However, regardless of what you want to state, Shawn Marion this year definitely proved and provided enough evidence that he was one of the better players in the NBA and he was not going to be taken lightly. During the season, he was also selected for a second All-Star appearance along with his first All-NBA team selection, making him one of the better forwards in the NBA. And if you still doubted Shawn Marion and how great of a player he was, by the end of the 05-06 season, there definitely would have been no doubt in anyone's mind how great of a player Shawn Marion was. Because in the next season, the Phoenix Suns, they hit a few speed bumps. In the beginning of the season, they had to make a decision to let Joe Johnson go to the Atlanta Hawks, and in return, they received Boris Diaw. Now, Boris Diaw, solid player, one of the more underrated players throughout the NBA, especially during this time period, especially for his playmaking abilities and his ability to space out the floor. However, defensively, he's just not that good whatsoever. And also when it comes to their inside play with their front court, Amar'e Stoudemire suffered an injury that kept him sidelined for practically the entire season, along with the playoffs. So that meant that Shawn Marion's responsibility and his load just became a bit bigger. Shawn Marion had to play 3 different positions throughout the entire season, as his minutes were allocated nearly evenly amongst the small forward, power forward, and center position. Shawn Marion will go on and finish that season averaging 21, nearly 22 points, nearly 12 rebounds, almost 2 assists, 2 steals, nearly 2 blocks, while shooting 52.5% from the field, which meant that outside of assists, Shawn Marion led the Phoenix Suns in 4 out of the 5 major statistical categories in the 2005-2006 season. Shawn Marion will go on to finish that season with another All-Star selection and his second All-NBA team selection as well. Shawn Marion had emerged, and he was one of the better players, especially because of his versatility in the NBA, and making another postseason appearance as the 06 Suns won 54 games. You could clearly see the impact as they still went to the conference finals despite the fact that Amar'e Stoudemire was sidelined for the entire season. Moving to the 06-07 season, Shawn Marion's numbers started to dip again, especially since Amar'e Stoudemire came back to the team and he was completely healthy. Unfortunately, he only averaged 17.5 points, still was grabbing nearly 10 rebounds, 2 steals, a block and a half, while shooting 52% from the field. In my opinion, for a third option, that is still really good. Unfortunately, the Phoenix Suns, despite the fact that they won 61 games that season, was knocked out in the second round by the San Antonio Spurs. And I mean, that's just how the Western Conference goes. And then the next season, the organization decided to move in a different direction. Because of the lack of size the team possessed was playing Shawn Marion at the power forward position, they felt as if they were at a huge disadvantage. So thus, they decided to trade Shawn Marion to the Miami Heat in return to receive Shaquille O'Neal. For the next several seasons, despite the fact that Steve Nash and Amar'e Stoudemire was still on a team, the organization was never the same. But that thus leaves us with the question, what happened to Shawn Marion? After he was traded to the Miami Heat, he was immediately traded to the Toronto Raptors, played for the Toronto Raptors for a handful of games, and then was traded to the Dallas Mavericks. Now at this point in Shawn Marion's career, he was a little bit older, already in his 30s, and his impact on the NBA just wasn't the same. However, luckily for Shawn Marion, he was able to accomplish something out of his prime with another team that he couldn't accomplish with the Phoenix Suns, and that is win a championship in the 2011 NBA Finals while being matched up against the Miami Heat. Shawn Marion would go on to play a few more years with the Dallas Mavericks and eventually retire as a Cleveland Cavalier in 2015. Once he retired, Shawn Marion finished top 100 in points, rebounds, steals, and blocks, something that only a handful of players can say they've been able to accomplish. And when it comes to Shawn Marion, I definitely believe if he played in today's NBA, he would be much more respected for his contributions to the NBA. And in my opinion, despite the fact that Mike D'Antoni does get a lot of credit for his genius on the offensive end, putting Shawn Marion at the power forward position is where his genius truly shines. Because I know this sounds extremely crazy in today's NBA, but back in the mid-2000s, there's no way that anyone would have legitimately thought about putting a 6'7" small forward at the power forward position while being able to rebound at an elite level and also space the floor out with some of the better three-point shooters in the NBA. So hopefully I open your eyes to Shawn Marion, his contributions to the NBA, and maybe next time we throw a little bit more respect on his name. But with that being said, people, I'll see you all next time. Peace.